Got it. So the governance principles. So there are basically 3 governance principles we would like to cover here today. And topically, it's to do with the board and senior management, responsibility and accountability for climate change risks. The second principle would ensure that both the financial institution have a sound understanding of these risks. And the third principle, that we should embed climate related risks into the fabric of our internal control frameworks, our enterprise risk management, and across all the 3 lines of defense. So the first line of defense would be tackling the climate risks and the strategies that ensue. We have to focus on climate risk. Second line of defense, do the risk responses and challenge the first line of defense strategic or tactical actions. And the third line of defense, which is internal audit, will basically challenge what the robustness of your CRMSA. If you can go on to the next slide. Then when it comes to the implementation of CRMSA, we outline it in 4 key phases. The first phase is you scope out what are the 14 principles of CRMSA, confirm the analysis framework, confirm what scope and business areas you would like to focus on. It should be a significant business area that should be taken into account for the CRMSA. And if it's an insignificant area, you should not include it because it will not give any strategic or tactical meaning to the business, right? Then you confirm the activities, and after that, you source for relevant data inputs. Data inputs can be sourced online as well as from, published, or you have to pay for it, but basically data inputs can be sourced, and it need not necessarily be confined to just the Malaysian environment, which I know that is a huge challenge based on the feedback given to the JC3 subcommittee 5, who is handling managing the data, bridging the data gaps, right? Then the second phase would move on to the analysis, and this is the purview of the actuaries, the technical experts, who would basically assess and monitor what are the activities and compare what existing practices you have to already look at climate change. For instance, in the P&C segments, you have already looked at flood or maybe even landslides, stuff like that. You should consider them in your analysis in a proper order. Then the understanding is very important for all the 3 lines of defense to understand what the analysis will come to mean to the people in the financial institution, all right? And risk has the responsibility of developing a risk response to it in the assessment, whether it's acceptable or there are areas of improvement, or this is the first iteration and it should be certain carried forward actions into the future. And the most important bit about it is communication. Now, communication is important, as I've seen that there are more than, I think, 200 people now on the call, 241 people on the call. And it's very good that you have got this curiosity to understand a bit more about CRMSA, not just from the ITOs, but also from the banks, asset managers, and other FIs, right? So understanding the CRMSA is important because that sets the direction of how climate change will affect your business and what you intend to do to adapt or mitigate to these climate risks, right? The next one is a project work group. As in all things, when it's quite technical and the subject matter cuts over a few functions, please put together a work group to handle it. It does 2 things primarily. One is the building of capacity across the various lines of the business lines, the functions. And the second thing is the common understanding so that, everyone knows where we are heading on climate risk. So principal participants would be from the P&C side, underwriting, claims, pricing, and reserving actuaries. Even from the life side, you would have underwriting, you would have claims, and you have the pricing and reserving actuaries. So from the investments perspective, you have IM governance, IM ops, and IM real estate, particularly so when you own properties that would potentially also be in a flood-prone zone, right? In own operations, you have facility management involved. And then in risk, of course, the 3 lines, the second and third lines of defense. If I can move on to the next slide, please. Right. Now I'd like to hand over the floor to Junaid, who can take us through the use cases for AIA first. The floor is yours, Junaid. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa, and good morning and assalamu alaikum to all the participants. So Teresa and I will share some use cases on operationalizing the guiding principles that were just mentioned earlier. Now, this is in no means an exact formula to how things should be implemented, but we're just going to show you some examples of how we've done it in our institutions. So I'll start with AIA first. Now, at the group level, we have established very clear structures for our systems, our processes and roles. And this is to ensure that both ESG-related risks and opportunities cut across the organization's business decision-making. And I'll share shortly on how we do it in Malaysia as well. Now, in terms of the management and progress on climate-related matters, these are overseen by the board of directors. So the responsibility lies there. At the management level, we have an ESG committee, an operational and financial risk committee at the group level, an investment committee, and then finally a climate and net zero steering committee. So I'm mentioning the committees that are, will have some element of exposure to ESG information, including climate-related information. And information will then flow between these committees based on how material it is, and it will escalate all the way up to the board if necessary. So the climate-related risk information will obviously also flow through these committees and can be routed through the board risk committee to the board or to the group chief executives and their committees as required. So I'll go into a bit more detail on this in the next slide. If we can please move to the next slide. Now, the board of directors, as I mentioned, has ultimate oversight on climate-related matters and ESG matters. They'll oversee our risk management activities and the implementation of our risk framework. They're also tasked with reviewing our risk appetite statement and matters relevant to climate as needed. The board is then, of course, supported by the board risk committee, which will determine the group's risk appetite, and it'll ensure that our risk management framework remains effective. Now this might be familiar to the risk people on this call who are attending already. Material risks, if any, will be identified through this process, and then mitigation actions, if any, will be proposed. And then, of course, depending on the materiality, as I said, some of these risks can then be escalated to the full board as required. Now, these committees, the risk committee and the board of directors, will meet at least quarterly, and then we replicate this structure at the AIA Malaysia level as well. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so now at the management level, we have risk committees which are doing their work and identifying climate-related risks. And then the committees will monitor these and review the adequacy of our risk management framework on an ongoing basis. I'll also share how we look at climate risk just shortly. In addition to this, we also have an ESG committee at the group level, which looks at AIA's ESG strategy, and then the committee will track its implementation and progress. So it's separate from the risk committee. Now, this committee will also oversee any reporting related to ESG, and then will provide updates to the board and senior management as required. So disclosures for ESG are routed through the ESG committee. The committee will also address ESG issues related to climate risk as necessary. And just in terms of governance of the ESG committee, it is currently chaired by a general counsel and meets at least on a quarterly basis. We have a similar committee in AIA Malaysia, which comprises of EXCO members who also lead the implementation of AIA's ESG strategy locally. So I'll show you in a bit what our ESG strategy looks like. And we have 5 pillars. Each pillar has an EXCO lead who will oversee the implementation of their particular pillar. Now, in addition to this, We also have an investment committee, which lays out investment requirements, if any, and then integrates ESG into them. So, for example, it will set out the investment standards under our investment governance framework. And of course, this is replicated locally. So if there are exclusions such as coal, these will be monitored at the business unit level as well. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so Eju Razwan introduced me as Director of Sustainability. A lot of you might be wondering what exactly is my role as a sustainability leader in AIA Malaysia. So before I address that, I want to point out that sustainability at AIA is a first line role as opposed to a second line role. And the reason for that is that we see ESG as an opportunity and value its integration into our strategy, as opposed to just seeing it as a risk. But this is, again, by no means the exact formula that has to be followed by everyone. So just as a reminder of the terminology of first line and second line, the first line is represented by the doers or the risk takers. These are the people on the front lines. They're managing risk, they're complying with the regulations and standards, and they're carrying out the company's sort of defined risk management processes daily. The second line of defense is managerial and is responsible for the oversight of the doer. So this is your risk and your compliance functions. So in my role, I help drive AIA's ESG strategy. I will also manage the local ESG committee and identify areas in which AIA can improve its ESG impact. In my role, I will also work closely with the business in complying with the CRMSA, and then, of course, try and provide thought leadership in technical areas. Now, to be able to provide thought leadership, of course, an individual in this role has to ensure that their capabilities are up to speed with market developments. So just to improve my own knowledge in this area, as Encik Razwan introduced, I had taken the Global Association of Risk Professionals exam on sustainability and climate risk. I've done a sustainability management short course from the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership. And then I actively get involved in working groups with the industry as well as the Institute of Actuaries who are working on sustainability. Now, capacity building is not just focused on the AIA head of sustainability. Of course, we ensure that capacity building is spread out to key stakeholders. So all relevant people who are involved, for example, in the CRMSA need to be up to speed on climate risk related matters. Then management and the board need to be equipped with the right kind of information as well. So we have various information sessions around the year to build capacity amongst the key stakeholders. On the bottom of the screen is our ESG strategy. And as I mentioned, we have 5 key pillars. Within each of these pillars, we have metrics and targets that are tracked in the ESG committee. So on the right, you see a little box with some of our governance related metrics and targets. One of them is that we will ensure that we do an annual review and manage our ESG related risks throughout our business. Okay, so maybe we can go to the next slide. And just as a pointer for everyone, you can send questions in the chat box along the way. So we will try and pick them up as much as we can, but we want this session to be interactive. And if you have any questions after what we present, we'll be happy to address them later as well. Okay, so finally, in terms of identifying climate risk, at AIA, we view it as a transverse risk at this stage. Now, what this means is that we view it as something that cuts across all our other risks within our risk landscape. So in terms of executing this, what it would mean is that when you are identifying other operational or financial risks, you will have a conversation with the first line on how they view climate risk impacting their area. So Teresa alluded to, for example, flood risk or physical asset risk. So you will go to your physical asset team and ask, how do extreme weather changes or wind erosion or flooding impact, for example, your exposure in the business? And then what mitigation do you have, for these risks? The excerpt on the screen shows some examples of climate-sensitive health risks that we reported in one of our older group ESG reports. And this shows impacts that are more relevant to life insurers and some family takaful operators on health-related illnesses, respiratory diseases, and vector-borne diseases rising as temperatures rise. Now, what I want to point out also is that the three lines of defense work together in tackling climate risk or ESG-related risks. So, for example, the first line, that is the executive management, will work with risk and compliance to ensure ESG and climate-related risks are anticipated and then managed. And then the third line of audit then provides an internal review of risk management. So that's AIA's example. I will now pass it back to Teresa to share some examples from Zurich.
Thanks very much, Junaid. So likewise in Zurich, we also have a governance structure, and sustainability basically is fully embedded in our governance structure. The overarching strategic responsibility and oversight would be the board of directors, and that's reflected also in the local environment. Insofar as responsibility for areas from the board committees, obviously at group level, because it's a public listed company, there are very many regions which we operate on. So these are the relevant board committees. So we have a governance, nomination, and sustainability committee. So it's not like cast in stone that sustainability should have just a standalone committee, but we put it under governance, nomination, and sustainability, primarily because of the disclosure areas, right? So governance is quite important, and that's why sustainability is parked under this. Then obviously we have the audit committee who will look at the financial and integrated sustainability reporting. So we have disclosed the integrated sustainability disclosures since 2021. And this you can basically get online in the public forums, right? Then we also have the risk and investment committee. You see that investment committee here is parked together with risk management. And this is the oversight of risk profile and risk management framework for investment processes, including sustainability risk. So where I mentioned earlier on in the webinar about where we put our money, the protection of assets and how we invest these assets, that is primarily under risk and investment committee. Then we have the remuneration committee, which takes care of what the performance from management, senior management is on based on climate related or sustainability areas. And this is inclusive here, all right? Then we go down the line, this would then be cascaded down to the group CEO, and the group CEO has got his direct line of reports, which also end up with a few committees as well. And they are the EXCO for sustainability. We have an EXCO sponsor, which is a CEO from one of the countries in EU, and then EXCO members per se, and the CEO's direct reports, right? Flowing down the line would be the sustainability team, and the sustainability team will drive the sustainability strategy, monitor the progress, and also, support the business in when it comes to the final integrated sustainability disclosure, and make sure that the audit passes muster before disclosure to the public. Then we've got management committees who are subject matter experts, and this includes integrated sustainability reporting risk and investment strategy. Going down the chart, this would be flow down to the various countries and business units globally for Zurich. And we have the operational responsibility for strategic implementation, which would be Sustainability Leaders Council. And this would be in the various countries, including group functions. Okay. If we can go on to the next slide. Right. So why is governance so important, and why it should be embedded in our governance? For sustainability should be embedded in our governance. It basically supports a stakeholder inclusive approach, right? When we embed sustainability throughout our businesses, it will basically allow us to maximize our impact and treat sustainability as an integral part of governing system. So this is a very clear statement, and it is from our integrated sustainability disclosure report. If you can go on to the next slide. All right. Mirroring all this, so we have a sustainability framework already in place. And basically, locally, we want to make sure that we integrate Takaful into it as well. So we make use of a global sustainability framework. And the strategies surrounding our sustainability framework are actually on 3 key pillars. The first one is planet. So where we focus on achieving net zero outcomes to have a positive impact on nature whilst helping improve the resilience of our planet and society. So in Malaysia, Zurich, Malaysia has got a project in reforestation and conservation in Lahad Datu, Merisuri forest, where we replant endemic, endangered, rare and threatened species of dipterocarps to make sure that we reforest where the land was illegally logged by for timber before, right? Then insofar as customers are concerned, we want to work closely with our customers, ensure that they have a very good customer journey, including empathy during the claims processes. Then for people, we believe that we should inculcate lifelong employability and upskilling, reskilling, learning in all our employees so that they would not necessarily just be employable within Zurich, but also in any other areas or other companies. And as a global employer, we provide protection solutions to millions of people. We need to make sure that we have a more skilled and inclusive society in our workforce. And lastly, we have the Z Zurich Foundation, which supports various community investment, where we've got Flood Resilience Alliance, and locally we are intending to embark on a global urban resilience flood program for the vulnerable communities in Malaysia. So it's a Swiss-based charitable foundation, and we drive community investment in all the areas where we have a presence quite prominently, including areas which are vulnerable, but Zurich need not necessarily have a presence, right? Then back to the use cases, right, sorry, there is a CRO forum. So there were some aspects that can be captured in a CRO forum, and globally, this forum paper is published, and this was the sharing where you can click on the link and get to the paper itself. So basically, it explains why operational risk self-assessment is important first for sustainability, and then that would culminate in the stress testing later, right? I'd just like to emphasize here today that climate risk stress testing, that paper will only be released according to the regulator by the end of the year or the last quarter, and not the subject matter of today's discussion. All right, so, and the last 2 slides. So these are the sharing of annual reports and disclosure reports and ESG from both Junaid and myself, available to all participants of the webinar. After the webinar, you basically can access them. And I'd like to hand the floor back over to Rizwan. So you can take us through the paces for Q&A, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Junaid. We have approximately, well, there's 25 minutes, right, before we end our question. And let's read some of the questions that we have been posted to us earlier, as well as that in the chat box today. So as I mentioned, we received an overwhelmingly lot of questions, more than 40 over questions in a diverse area of CRMSA, and more today in the chat box. Therefore, as this is a series of CRMSA, and for today we are covering on governance, and due to time limitation, I will pick up only few relevant, 2 or 3 relevant questions from the previous or earlier submitted question, and definitely a few from our chat box. Rest assured that MTA team and the speaker will prepare a FAQ based on the question received, and we'll share with the participant later in our website, takafulforall.org. So we promise that we will leave no question unanswered. Yeah. So the first question, what is the state of Malaysian Takaful and Takaful operator implementation on sustainability and CRMSA in its operation? Perhaps any one of you can take the challenge of this question.
Maybe I'll take that, Encik Razwan. So it's a very good question. And I guess members are also interested in finding out how others are doing in terms of CRMSA implementation. So at MTA, we were interested in the same question as well, and we carried out a survey to ask, the members, how prepared are you for the requirements? And then we replicated this survey at LIAM, the Life Insurance Association, and PM, the General Insurance Association. So without going into a lot of details on the survey, maybe I'll share one of the main questions that we asked, which was verbatim, how prepared are you for the CRMSA requirements? And users could respond with one of a few answers. One was 0% prepared, 25% prepared, 50% prepared, 75% prepared, and 100% prepared. And then we did this for different areas, so governance, risk appetite, risk management, disclosures, and strategy. Now, since this is a governance webinar, maybe I can share the governance results. So for governance, around close to about 70% of the members across the 3 working groups said that they were more than halfway prepared in terms of governance. Now, for risk management and risk appetite, however, there were members who said they were not as prepared, which is not surprising. And then the areas which, as Teresa mentioned, require compliance by next year, which is scenario analysis and disclosures, the members said that they were least bit prepared. So the key message here is that we're all laying the foundation, and the idea of these webinars is also to learn from each other, and then over the next 6 months, then achieve 100% compliance to the requirements of the CRMSA, at least in governance. Yeah.
Just a matter of curiosity, Junaid. You basically have the experience of both sides, meaning to say you are basically representing the AIA in insurance LIAM, for example, and also you are part of our sustainability network in MTA. So, is there a difference between the results of the convention of the insurance as compared to the Takaful operators with regards to the survey? Let's focus on the governance in terms of the readiness of having the structure within the organization for sustainability.
Okay, so in maybe both Teresa and I can answer, because we both work closely with three working groups. So I'll take a stab at it first. In terms of the governance requirements, no. The way the information flows is very similar regardless of the kind of entity there is, because it's climate risk related information, it's ESG related information, the committees are similar in structure, and information is escalated in the same manner. There is a question in the group chat whilst we were talking, however, which says that, does the Sharia committee assume any role related to sustainability? If yes, how can it be differentiated from the ESG committee? So what we do is that we will share our ESG related updates or our climate risk related updates as part of our updates to the Sharia committee. So the Sharia committee will be apprised of these matters. Of course, they are looking at Sharia related risks, and if there are any, information will be highlighted to the Sharia committee and acted upon. Otherwise, not such major differences. When we do scenario analysis next year, I imagine there will be differences in the way the risks pan out in terms of the financial structures that are different in Takaful entities as opposed to conventional entities. Teresa, if there's anything to add.
Yeah, so from the perspective of Sharia, there is one important piece that I didn't mention earlier on. When we do capacity building, we have to include the Sharia committee as well. So whatever training we provide to board, we should also avail this training to the Sharia committee. And Sharia should also be part of the journey of sustainability, because there are areas of vulnerable communities that we will want to insure, and they can provide their feedback as well. Bearing in mind that every year you have got zakat that is contributed to the asnaf, as well as, surplus distribution where you want to set aside for donation. That's also one area of sustainability that Takaful already subscribes to, right? So, but it's not clearly articulated in any sustainability framework. So that's why I mentioned earlier on, Zurich's global sustainability framework, we will integrate the BBIT and Sharia aspects as well. So that's very important from a local perspective. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So another question, I believe related to the earlier answer given, and also some part of the presentation, but we have this question asking about, in terms of the curiosity, to know the practices across the industry pertaining to the setting up of either the sub-board committee for climate and sustainability and subsume under the board risk committee purview. How does it work basically? Perhaps Teresa, elaborate on this.
Yes. So like I mentioned earlier on, when I fleshed out, for the Zurich Group's board committees, etc., it's not really cast in stone. So at Zurich Group, we put them under the governance and sustainability committee because of the high level of synergy of the whole world. The eyes are on them on disclosure. So that's why it went into governance. From a local perspective, it's actually in the risk management and sustainability committee. I have seen other companies where they put them in the remuneration committee, where they make sure that the key leaders, the key risk takers in the organization are remunerated a certain percentage according to their sustainability deliverables, right? So for instance, like work sustainability or people sustainability, how diverse you employ people. So maybe the line function managers, whether they have a mixture of, millennials and subject matter experts, and how you would basically create a succession plan for younger generation to be in the workforce and not just an aging population per se, right? So it's not cast in stone. You could have that in a governance or a risk or a standalone sustainability committee as well. Yeah, it depends on the organization.
Any view from you? Yeah, any view from you, Junaid?
So actually, there's a very timely additional question that's also been raised. And I think it's in the same theme as what we're discussing. So it says, it's lovely to see that there's a lot of support from the various departments. Could you please share on how you managed to convince the stakeholders to collaborate and take up these responsibilities instead of it entirely falling on the sustainability team or certain people only to drive it? It is one of the challenges currently faced from our side. So again, something both Teresa and I can probably answer. You'll find a whole mix of people. We've been lucky enough to find a lot of people who are passionate about sustainability. Not everyone is, but some people are, and you can harness that and turn it into a momentum, that aids the whole sustainability movement. Now, when it came to implementation of the CRMSA, about a year before that, we started a few capacity building sessions. So we had, general sessions on information on climate related risk. AIA was also working on its ESG strategy. So we had shared that, and we found a lot of people got interested by way of the engagement during these sessions. When it came to CRMSA, it wasn't just sustainability saying we will do everything. There was an additional question asked, like, how is risk not doing it? Actually, there's a lot of individuals who have gotten together in a group. Teresa alluded to creating a group. Actually, we did the same thing. So we have the first line, so we'll have finance in there, we will have investments, we will have sustainability, then we'll have risk and compliance in there. And any relevant stakeholders will join this group, provide their thought. There will be ideation on how to address the regulations, and then we will collectively, sort of ensure that we do achieve compliance for that particular area. So it is a very collaborative thing. It's something you'll build up, and you'll find, that I would say there's no exact formula, but the thing that worked for us was sharing the right kind of information with the right people, and then getting relevant people involved. Teresa, did you?
I'm smiling because I just like to make one comment. Make friends. make friends at the workplace, right? So it's as straightforward as making friends and digging your hands into the soil together to plant this seed called sustainability, so that everyone can work together. Because it's not just I see a lot of comments about, why is the second line of defense driving this, and how come, it landed up just because there's this word risk, and then it lands up in risk management's table, and you are the owner, you are the driver, etc. So it doesn't, it does not work that way. Basically, at Zurich, each specific line function that's already involved in the sustainability journey has got a metric to deliver, and this is reported at the quarterly board meetings. So initially, how I started my sustainability journey within the company was by championing climate change month. Every September, we have a climate change month, and activities and webinars will be organized. So we reach out to people like net zero waste influencers, people who are in forestry, reforestation, conservation, etc. So this ignite the call to action, and people will join. For CRMSA, I already shared, what the work group will do and the various functions that should be involved. It's not a journey alone. Sustainability is always hand-holding, walking together, because believe it or not, although you might think that Junai and I have got a lot of information in our heads already and our experience, the journey is a long walk together, right? We are still learning every day. And yes, potentially we also learn from you when you raise these questions. I think, Jeff, you asked the question, so I like to address Jeff's question. Said that,
But before you go there, Teresa, I just like to ask something that you mentioned just now: sustainability-based remuneration. Very interesting, because if you look at the risk governance PD by Bank Negara, there is a concept of risk-based remuneration, and we know that a lot of companies have difficulty in actually doing that. Is it effect to one function? Is it a person, or is it the whole department, and so on and so forth? So how about sustainability-based remuneration? That's something
correct. So you see, the call to action for climate change is a very, very strong call. However, a lot of businesses say that, or financial institutions say that, the government's not moving fast enough, etc., etc. So we cannot wait for other people. The one step we take today will help tomorrow, right? So one of the key areas that I think in advanced countries, they found that including the key risk takers remuneration package for driving strategic actions for sustainability works. So, and I think our regulator took a leaf out of that book and incorporated this germination of an idea to let us know that all of us in this room are responsible for sustainability, for climate change. It is not just finance who's doing the reporting of the numbers. It's not investment management who decides where to put the money. There must be a strategy. Are we going to go into green investments, or are we going to go into dirty investments? I mean, high GHG emitters, right? And there's this whole topic about transition plan and how, we talk to make sure and engage with issuers that there is a just transition, right? We need to understand them. So remuneration would be part of the game. Just watch that space coming lah.
Okay. The next question is basically intertwined between the question the question that we received before, as well as the question that we received in the chat box, and also that's a burning question in myself also, right? There are three parties in all the organization, right? You have your senior management, you have the board, and you have the masses, the population, the staff. Now, can both of you basically just quickly give some examples, suggestion, or elaboration in terms of how we can get the board, the senior management, and all the staff to be on board on this journey for sustainability? It's not the Teresa thing. It's not like, for example, a Unite thing. It's for everyone. I remember what we are facing right now with regards to sustainability is something that I faced perhaps, on risk management fraternity 20 years ago. That is Rajuan's job, not mine. Whereas, that the risk is basically everyone's role and responsibility. So what are some of the examples, suggestion, and elaboration in terms of not only capability building? We touched a lot in the presentation about building the capability, but more importantly, the awareness. How can we make, for example, the staff, the normal staff in the organization can click with the concept of sustainability, that they are basically doing good for the planet.
Yeah, maybe I'll start to answer this question first. So I mentioned earlier on about Climate Month, right? So this is what Zurich does on a global basis, and I championed Climate Month in 2021 in the midst of all the COVID-19, etc. Right? So normally we would have physical presentation, we meet and greet the staff, and we have a fun day activities like you teach them how to pot a plant, etc. Right? So in COVID-19, what do we do? So we actually went into virtual, right? So we did webinars, and they were very well attended. Let me share with you that it was always over 300 people who wanted to attend these webinars internally. That means only from the Zurich fraternity, which meant staff were interested in knowing more about sustainability. So as a driver for this, I wouldn't just say, capacity building, but it's awareness first, right? So it's not forced. Staff can volunteer to join or not join. It's to pique their interest, right? And every year we do it without fail. All right. So the topic will be centered around climate change, and that's how we do it. Then you need to find the voice in the boardroom to make sure that the board understands where we are going and heading towards sustainability. And that's why you need to have a board committee for sustainability, right? So that there will be a presentation at board to showcase what the business has done. And this awareness first, and then their interest will be, okay, they want to know more about this, and maybe you even have to do training for the board, right? So from a risk or from a sustainability perspective, you have to have these kind of engagement and collaboration with the board as well. And some directors are very, very conversant with the topic of sustainability. They would also be able to share, right? So we are seeing that the interest at board level is getting very much higher, and also interest in making sure that senior level management are also having this knowledge as well. Yeah, over to you, Junaid.
Yes. Both of you are coming from the MNC, AIA, and also Zurich, where you have a global policy that being set potentially, at the HQ level. But for locally like company, okay, a local established company, like will sustainability get the same fate of risk management like 20 years ago, where everyone see risk management as extra luggage that I don't need to carry, right? And then that this is not what I need to do in delivering my KPI, and obviously along the way, there is a lot of things that we need to be done, particularly in sending the tone from the top. That works very, very well, in terms of creating the risk management culture within the organization. So if, let's say, sustainability, should sustainability take or learn, the same experience that risk management have gone through in the enterprise risk management, particularly, in our undertaking? What do you think about that?
I think it's faster pace. And I think Junaid should take a step at this, because he's already first line of defense. He moved away from the risk function, and he's already first line of defense for sustainability. So, Junaid, please.
Okay, so just in terms of engaging people, I think we have to understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach here. There's a very different level of capacity building for the board, the management, then staff related to CRMSA, and then all staff. So as Teresa mentioned, there's a lot of engagement activities that we will also do with staff, just like Zurich does. And it is like centered around our ESG strategy. So it's very good to have an ESG strategy in place. What are the things you can focus on? What are the things you are good at? And what are the things that will help the planet? And then, cascade this across the business and then get people to contribute towards that ESG strategy. Now, in terms of like the information and engagement with CRMSA technical folk. So for example, if we're looking at liquidity risk and integrating climate risk considerations into that, engagement activities on ESG will not help there. You have to have very technical talks about the incidence and the severity of flooding in Malaysia and how it can impact perhaps banking cash flows and what impact will it have to your liquidity stresses. For the management and the board, the engagement is very different. So the board, of course, and the management need to fulfill their requirements and ensure that risks are managed in an appropriate manner. And they need to understand all the jargon that is being presented. So if, for example, AIA has a net zero goal, we need to explain and get the board on, to understand clearly what net zero means, so that, of course, they can communicate it and question us on it as well. Then AIA has signed up, for example, for the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which gives you a structured plan to reduce your emissions. So we need to talk about what are these emissions, how do we calculate them, where are they concentrated in Malaysia. It's a very, very technical capacity building that's involved. But it's best to sort of slice and dice these and see which ones you want to prioritize first, and then build up to the larger population. Yeah.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left, basically. Perhaps either Junaid and Teresa, you want to pick up any other question that you feel that you want to answer right now from the chat?
Right. I think Jeff asked a question about, how we pull the sustainability team together. So in Zurich, it's not one sustainability team. It's actually cutting across all the functions. And because we've embedded this into the strategy a couple of years already by now, we basically don't need a sustainability official team per se. So like in investment management, there's a go-to person for sustainability. In underwriting, there's a go-to person for sustainability, right? And in HR, there's also a go-to person for sustainability, cutting across all functions, right? So it's not like you put risk management, like sustainability and risk management equates one sustainability unit, and then they sit there and then they try to understand what the various business functions are doing and then give advice, right? So actually it escalates the need for the business function to understand sustainability and climate change and then apply it into their BAU, rather than waiting for second line of you and say that, guys, you didn't include this climate change into your modeling, for instance. That is a very, very dramatic, ask already. So basically, like adverse weather in your modeling, have you included it? It is a given that it should be included, but if it was not included, you cannot wait for someone from sustainability to come and ask you, right? So things like that. That's why,
How about you, Junaid? Is there any question that catch your eye in the chat box?
Maybe the word actuarial caught my eye, given I'm an actuary. So it says in the actuarial world, the longer the projection, the wider the funnel of doubt on the credibility of projection results. So I assume this is also from another
actuary.
Yes, so agreed. So when there's a very long projection, your results can be divergent. So we have very little initial information coming on linking, for example, rising temperatures to mortality impact. So some papers suggest that Asia will face worse mortality impacts than the rest of the world, and we will see up to a 5 to 10% increase in mortality rates at the end of the year, end of the century, if nothing is done to address climate change. Having said that, we are also seeing the initial extrapolations that were made, that the climate science is very clear, right? Hot temperatures will result in rising incidence and severity of weather events, and we are seeing it already. So even in Malaysia, if you look at Malaysian rainfall over the last 3 decades, you'll see a rise decade on decade in terms of both the incidence and the severity of flooding. So the extrapolations aren't very far off. Scenario analysis is meant to really, help you understand the way risks should be looked at in terms of what actions you can take now versus the consequences that they might have in the future. Yeah.
So thank you, Junaid. Thank you, Teresa. Unfortunately, this is the only time that we have. As I mentioned much earlier, rest assured that MTA team and also the speaker, we will prepare the FAQ based on all the questions that we receive and share with the participant letter in our website, takaful4all.org. Now, in general, what we touch a lot within this session is that CRMSA highlights, the speaker did highlight the significance of collaboration as well as accountability in managing the climate risk. It's also, this particular guideline also provide a framework for inclusive, it promotes for inclusive stakeholder involvement, transparent disclosure, coordination in order to foster resilience in the face of the climate risk. So before we go, we wish to express our appreciation to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Reza Wong, as well as Mr. Muhammad Junaid, for their valuable insight and knowledge sharing on the CRMSA governance and leading best practice. So do wait for the upcoming series on MTA Sustainability webinar on second week of August. We plan to have this second webinar sharing on risk appetite and risk management. Because this section takes the largest of the real estate of the whole PD, we will split it into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Hopefully, first week of August or second week of August, and then the fourth week of August, we will cover the second part of the risk appetite and risk management. And final of our webinar series on disclosure will be requirement. It will be sometime early this September, prior to our, hopefully this webinar can become the prelude to our sustainability conference that we plan in September. So do look out for our invitation in the next series. And with that, thank you very much for your participation and have a nice day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh from us at MTA.